I ate alone in my car after graduation until the principal knocked on my window. If you've ever felt lonely during what should have been your proudest moment, this story might resonate with you. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys that will touch your heart. Now let's dive into a story about unexpected connections and second chances. I never imagined I'd be eating a cold burger alone in my beat-up Honda Civic on graduation day. The muffled sounds of celebration echoed from the school gymnasium as I sat in the far corner of the parking lot, watching families take photos with their graduates through my fogged-up windshield. My own graduation cap and gown were carelessly tossed onto the passenger seat, the tassel hanging limply over the edge. The diploma, the one I'd worked so hard for, lay unopened in my lap. Everyone else had someone. Parents, grandparents, siblings, friends. They were all inside beaming. With pride, taking endless photos and planning celebration dinners. I had sent out invitations 3 weeks ago, one to my dad's last known address in Arizona, another to my mom's rehab facility in Oregon, and a third to my older brother who was too busy with his own life to bother with mine. The responses were exactly what I had expected. Silence, excuses, and finally my own quiet resignation. Principal Harrison had called my name like everyone else's. I'd walked across that stage, accepted my diploma with a firm handshake, and even managed a smile for the photographer. I heard a few cheers, probably from teachers who knew I'd overcome more than most to get to this point. But when I looked out at the crowd, there was no one standing, no one calling my name, no one waiting to hug me afterward. So I did what seemed sensible at the time. I changed out of my gown in the bathroom, slipped out the side door while families were still congregating, and drove through the first fast food place I saw. Now I was sitting here eating lukewarm fries and wondering if this moment, this achievement that was supposed to be monumental, would always feel this hollow. The sharp rap on my window nearly made me choke on my burger. Principal Harrison stood there still in his full academic regalia, looking at me through the glass with an expression I couldn't quite read. I reluctantly rolled down the window, preparing for some generic platitude about how I should be inside celebrating with everyone. "Else, mind if I join you?" he asked instead. Before I could answer, he was already walking around to the passenger side. I quickly grabbed my cap and gown to make room, shoving them into the back seat along with empty energy drink cans and textbooks I no longer needed. "Sorry about the mess," I mumbled as he folded his tall frame into my small car, his ceremonial robes bunching awkwardly around him. "I've seen worse," he said simply, adjusting his position. "The teacher's lounge would shock you." An uncomfortable silence filled the car as I held my half-eaten burger, unsure what to do next. Principal Harrison wasn't known for personal connections with students. In my 4 years, I'd only been in his office twice. Once when I was caught skipping class to work on a scholarship application, and once when he called me in to tell me I was valedictorian material if I applied myself more consistently. "You number," he finally said, looking straight ahead through the windshield rather than at me. "I noticed you weren't in the gym for the reception." I shrugged, taking another bite of my burger to avoid responding immediately. "Wasn't really feeling the whole celebration thing. I get that." He nodded, surprising me. "My own high school graduation? I spent the after party hiding in the library. Last place anyone would look for me. This didn't fit the image of the stern, always composed Principal Harrison I knew, the man who gave perfectly measured speeches and seemed to glide through the hallways with unshakable authority." "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. He smiled slightly. "My parents were having a very public argument about who I'd be living with after the ceremony. Made the whole proud family thing feel like a bit of a farce." He paused, then added, "They'd been divorced for 3 years at that point, but somehow my graduation day seemed like the perfect time to rehash old grievances." "That sucks," I offered lamely, not knowing what else to say. "It did," he agreed. "But you know what? That day wasn't really about them," I snorted. "Yeah, well, today isn't really about anyone for me. No audience, no problem, right?" "Principal," Harrison turned to face me now. "I saw your academic record, Ethan. I know what you've been dealing with. Working night shifts at that warehouse while maintaining a 3.8 GPA isn't something just anyone could do." I shifted uncomfortably. I didn't like being reminded of the balancing act my life had become since I started living on my own last year. The juggling of work schedules with exam dates, the constant exhaustion, the way I'd sometimes fall asleep in the school library during my free periods because it was the only quiet place I could rest. It's not a big deal, I muttered. Lots of kids have it worse. That doesn't make what you've accomplished any less significant, he countered. You know, when I saw your name on the graduating list, I made a point to watch for you specifically today. Why? I asked, genuinely confused. I wasn't a troublemaker, but I wasn't exactly the type of standout student principals usually noticed. Because 4 years ago, your middle school counselor called me, he said quietly. She warned me you might not make it to graduation. Said your home situation was deteriorating, that you'd missed too many days in 8th grade, that you might drop out before sophomore year. He paused. She wasn't being pessimistic. She was just looking at the statistics. Kids in your situation often don't make it. I remembered that time all too well. Mom's addiction getting worse, dad leaving, the eviction notice, sleeping on friends' couches until finally my brother let me crash on his floor until he too decided I was too much responsibility. Yeah, well, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Spite is a pretty powerful motivator. Principal Harrison actually laughed at that. Indeed it is. But it takes more than spite to do what you've done, Ethan. It takes something special. We sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of distant celebrations still floating through the air. I'd stopped eating, the food suddenly tasteless. You know what I think? Principal Harrison finally said. I think sometimes we focus so much on who isn't there that we forget to acknowledge who was beside us all along. No offense, but I've been pretty much on my own, I said, a defensive edge creeping into my voice. Have you? He challenged gently. Miss Reeves stayed after hours every Tuesday to help you with calculus for an entire semester. Coach Phillips let you use the school showers when your apartment's water was shut off for those 2 weeks. The cafeteria staff always made sure you got extra portions. He raised an eyebrow. And I seem to recall someone allowing you to sleep in the teacher's lounge that week you were between apartments. I felt my face grow hot. I didn't know he knew about that. Miss Coleman, the English teacher, had given me the key, making me promise to be out before 6 a.m. when the early teachers started arriving. You weren't alone, Ethan. Not really. You just didn't have the conventional support system. I looked down at my hands, not knowing how to process this. I'd been so focused on what I didn't have. Parents in the audience, family photos, a celebration, dinner, that I hadn't considered what I did have. Teachers who bent rules, staff who looked the other way, a principal who apparently paid more attention than I'd realized. I have something for you, Principal Harrison said, reaching inside. His robe. He pulled out an envelope. This was going to be a surprise at the reception, but since you're here, I took the envelope cautiously. Inside was a card signed by what looked like the entire faculty and staff. Congratulations, Ethan. We're so proud of you. You're going to do amazing things. The messages filled every available space. But what caught my eye was the check paper clip to the inside, a scholarship fund the teachers had apparently pooled together, enough to cover my first semester books at community college. We know about your partial scholarship, Principal, Harrison explained, and we wanted to help fill in some gaps. It's not much, but it's everything, I interrupted, my voice cracking embarrassingly. I cleared my throat. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he replied. Just make sure it wasn't wasted on you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Principal Harrison checked his watch. The reception will be wrapping up soon. I should get back. He opened the car door but paused before getting out. You know, Ethan, people are shaped by those who show up in their lives, not just those who don't. He gave me a meaningful look. And sometimes we need to give others the chance to show up. With that, he stepped out of the car, adjusting his academic robes. But before closing the door, he leaned down one more time. The staff is having a small gathering at Donovan's Bistro in about an hour. Very casual. Just a tradition after graduation. He shrugged. If you wanted to stop by, I'm sure everyone would be glad to see you. Your choice, of course. Then he was gone, walking back toward the gymnasium, leaving me sitting there with my cold food and a card that suddenly meant more than any family photo could have. I sat there for a long time thinking about what Principal Harrison had said about being shaped by those who show up, about conventional versus unconventional support systems, about how I'd been so fixated on what I didn't have that I'd become blind to what I did. The parking lot gradually emptied as families left for their celebrations. I watched them go. The proud parents, the grandparents with their cameras, the siblings alternating between boredom and pride. For the first time, I didn't feel that sharp pang of jealousy. Instead, I found myself wondering about their stories. How many of those smiling families had their own complications behind the scenes? How many of those graduates had struggled in ways I couldn't see? I started my car as the last of the families drove away. The school building looked different somehow. Not just the place I'd been trying to escape for 4 years, but somewhere that had, in its own institutional way, sheltered me when I needed it most. I carefully placed the card in my glove compartment, handling it like something precious. Then I checked the time. The teachers gathering at Donovan's would be starting soon. The thought of walking in there made my stomach twist with anxiety. But something else was pushing against that feeling. Something that felt uncomfortably like hope. I pulled out my phone and looked up the address for Donovan's Bistro. It wasn't far. I could at least drive by, see if I felt comfortable enough to go in. No commitment. Just an option. As I put the car in reverse, I caught sight of my graduation cap in the back seat. On impulse, I reached back and grabbed it, placing it on the passenger seat where I could see it. A reminder that today, despite everything, I had accomplished something significant. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to celebrate it alone. When I pulled into Donovan's parking lot 20 minutes later, I almost turned around 3 times. But then I saw Miss Reeves getting out of her car, laughing at something Coach Phillips was saying as they walked toward the entrance. Miss Coleman was already holding the door open, her graduation heels replaced with comfortable flats. These people had seen me at my worst. They'd watched me fall asleep in class from exhaustion, wear the same clothes for days when laundry wasn't an option, and struggle to keep up when life became too overwhelming. Yet here they were, still showing up, still creating space. I took a deep breath, grabbed my graduation cap, and got out of the car. Principal Harrison saw me first as I hesitantly approached the restaurant entrance. He didn't make a big deal about it, just nodded slightly with what might have been approval before turning back to his conversation. But Miss Reeves broke into a wide smile when she spotted me, waving me over enthusiastically. "Ethan, you made it," she exclaimed as if my presence was the missing piece that would make the evening complete. And as other teachers turned to greet me, I felt something shift inside, a knot loosening, a weight lifting. I didn't have the conventional graduation day. There were no parents beaming with pride, no family photos to commemorate the occasion, no relatives giving me cards with cash tucked inside. But as I stepped into that restaurant surrounded by people who had quietly supported me for years, I realized I had something perhaps even more valuable. A chosen family who had seen my worth when I couldn't see it myself. Sometimes life doesn't give us the celebrations we think we deserve. Sometimes we eat alone in our cars while others gather inside. But sometimes, if we're lucky, someone knocks on our window and reminds us that we're not as alone as we feel. And sometimes that makes all the difference. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories about resilience, unexpected connections, and finding family in unlikely places. Remember, you never know whose window you might need to knock on today or who might be knocking on yours.